we spoke about the project, we talked about how we were going to do simulations to better understand the optimization process. And we were sort of cutting it close with the due date for the project. So that was our last step. And it's what we did, and with what we are showing here at the bottom right. Basically, what we did was generate 10,000 simulations of two things. First, of random weights within the Dow 30, which told us basically where the base beta ranges should be. And with that in mind, then we generated the same 10,000 simulations for the optimization model with random base betas. Basically, the results were one, it did sort of work as we wanted it to, where when you picked any random base beta, the resulting beta for the whole portfolio would stay in the range. It doesn't necessarily stay higher or lower, but it does stay in range, meaning for example, like market, for the market factor, it stays between 1.25 and 0.75, which is a decent close range, given that we saw that it could have ranged between 5 and -2 or something like that. I don't remember the exact number, but the general idea is that the model worked, not as we would have expected it to necessarily, but it did result in the betas that we wanted to, meaning it did keep the range we were expecting it to be. So that graph basically tells us the solid line is the average of the random base betas we picked, and then it's just how the points are the resulting betas for the whole portfolio.
Okay, so that, I just want to spend a minute on that. So like I'm looking at like it, you have like you have like Cisco and like Han, like the specific stocks on those two like charts.
Yeah,
I
just picked two of the stocks that better presented the graph.
So are those
the results were
portfolio, like those are the betas ran on like the regression model for the portfolio or for the stock?
For the stock. Well,
okay.
No. Those are the betas for the portfolio,
Okay.
given the weight of those specific stocks.
Okay, that's
what
I
assumed. Yeah, the x-axis is the weight of that specific stock, and then the betas are the portfolio as a whole.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so I mean I picked those two because they those were the better graphs to explain it, but they all behaved in the same way. So in if I could sort of summarize this, I would say that yes, the model worked. The optimization is doing what we wanted it to do, but I want to tweak it so that it's better, I guess, in the sense that I would want to optimize it to be strictly higher than the base betas that we want, meaning that it should be like I wanted it to be so that if you customize it that way, then the results should definitely be higher, strictly, not just in range, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. We can talk about it a little bit later, but I would recommend in like your optimization formula, well, like let's just focus on the charts for right now. See, like just like really process and think through. And I know I had a conversation with some of you guys yesterday where it's like it's important to think through strategically what you're doing because that's going to set up the data analysis. So for example, in this case, we can see how many times that beta number, like how sensitive it does changes based on that stock weight. So that's what's constantly changing, right? The weights. And what we're
Correct.
targeting, what each of those dots are, like the residual between all those dots is the change in weights, but the output, what we're looking at is just the new beta. So if you really think about what that means your objective is finding the beta of the number you want to target for each factor. And the decision variable is how much weight difference you want to shift it to achieve that target beta, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, and that's sort of how it's set up right now. Meaning, we are looking at difference in weights as the decision variable.
Yeah, I just mean like I was
In
looking at
the
your
way-
optimization like formula. That's why I'm like referring to that.
Yeah.
Right. So just to chip in, hi Jordan. For
How's it
some
going?
reason, yeah, no, not bad. I'm not sure I got a chance to talk yesterday. So myself and Asim were actually new on the project, so we're still pretty much doing our back-end research, trying to familiarize with the with the entire process. One quick question though is there like some sort of benchmark, for the expected beta? Is there like what's the industry benchmark at the moment?
Yeah, so like I mean, we can technically it's not a simple answer to answer that. Technically, you can find out what that is by like I know Rodrigo has a data like where if you just take the Dow 30, you take its like monthly, quarterly, daily, annual returns. I don't care what you do, but just take its returns. And then you run the regression off the Farmer French factor returns, which is provided on their website. It'll tell you what their respective betas are. You can treat that as a benchmark. Benchmarks are always index specific, like whichever one you want to pick. The goal for the summer project, just to give a background, like I like really worked on this to really like building out Farmer French and kind of driving with a more data-driven analysis and trying to incorporate in portfolio optimization. The switch to the following year in the summer project, where we thought would be really interesting, is that it's difficult to be a portfolio manager when you're dealing with factor investing. We don't know which factor, like we don't know if value is going to outperform like size factor, for example. Yeah. We don't know that. But what we do know is how exposed we can be to each factor. So if one performs well, like we'll be more or less exposed to it. So the goal of the summer project was to essentially achieve a benchmark for a portfolio. So it's like to model off of the benchmark. So for example, if the value sensitivity beta for like the Dow is like, let's say like 0.9, for example, like how do we get our portfolio to have a 0.9 beta sensitivity to match the benchmark, essentially?
Oh, right. Okay.
So as you see these two charts where like all those dots represent different betas, essentially we're just kind of like, those are simulations, but we're really just trying to understand what weight difference, like if I change weight by X, what will the change in beta of Y be, in a sense?
Okay.
Yeah, and what we found out about that was that there's not a real correlation between the base betas and the resulting betas, which is why I want to tweak the optimization model. But what it does do is that it does stay in the range that we want to.
Which is good. We're not targeting an exact number.
Yeah.
It's a prediction range.
Yeah, correct. So it works, just not as strictly direct as we wanted it to.
Yeah, right. And the other day we were discussing with Rodrigo, we were sort of looking at alternatives because I mean, from a French model, from what I understand, is a bit like traditional. I mean, it's still very much in use. Yeah, it's still very much in use. I mean, in the industry. But I'm just thinking, are there like other models that are recent or modern or I don't know, something that can probably use machine learning?
So to sort of give you some context about that, Jordan, what I was thinking about this semester, like next steps for the project is, so basically I do graduate this in December, So I need to wrap my side of things. So basically, next steps would be to conclude this specific project and the same path that we followed during the summer. And then Asim and Olu and the undergrads will either continue to work on that same path or generate a new idea based off a new model or something like that, which would be still directly involved in factor investing.
Yeah. So we're pretty much going to be picking it up from where Rodrigo stopped. Just that we're looking at implementing a new model and pretty much see how that goes. So I guess we're just looking for recommendations. I mean, if it's probably best to if you can probably get probably say on that data source, or maybe instead of Dow 30, maybe we do something else, focus on more ESG rated companies, or I mean, yeah, it's still all out there. But what are the current